Rear Admiral Perseus Nelson stared intently at the unchanging holographic display of the Diamond system with a mixture of trepidation and anticipation. As the Supreme Commander of Joint Forces Command, Perseus had access to the complete intelligence offerings on the Koton Independent Republic's numerous overt and clandestine security and espionage services. He knew, with excruciating detail, the scale and extent of the power arrayed against Koton by the Galador hegemony. There would be no surprises. That wasn't the hegemony's style. They would simply invade with brute strength, overwhelming force, and absolute dominance as only they and the Diaspora could. It was one thing to know all this: fleet tonnage, command and control assets, special forces capabilities. It was another thing entirely to witness the hegemony forces in full deployment firsthand. Yes, they were the enemy, seeking to inflict upon the people of Koton nothing but subjugation, slavery, and death. But part of them, a small but not inconsequential part, was excited by what was to come. And after what felt like an age, the hologram before him began to flicker. Red icons materialized, confirming the arrival of the Hegemony fleet on the outskirts of the system, beyond the orbit of Triska. There were only a handful of dots at first, then dozens, then hundreds. Within minutes, the display was filled with red, like a crimson wave building up in the vast black ocean of space, preparing to crash down on the shores of Koton to engulf them all in a deadly flood of carnage. Perseus was shocked into a momentary stupor at the sight of the Hegemony's overwhelming show of force. And he was not alone. Yet for the rest of the Joint Forces Command and other detachments, brigades, and wings in the field, their shock of the Hegemony's dominant arrival immediately began to warp into implacable fear and perilous doubt. Perseus, like most of the senior Mobilary leadership, knew outright victory was impossible. Decisions had been made decades earlier for Koton not to materialize in the face of the Hegemony threats. Instead, the Republic's leaders had chosen to wield the economic weapons of blockades, sanctions, and embargoes in hopes of crippling the Hegemony economy and snuffing out their capacity to wage war. Yet, those tactics had failed and, if anything, had only hastened Galador's invasion, wasting precious time in which Koton could have prepared. By the time the constitutional government had been suspended and Perseus appointed Supreme Commander, it was too late to prevent defeat. But they could ensure that the Hegemony's victory was a Pyrrhic one. As he watched the red icons of the assembled Hegemony fleet vanguard begin to disperse across the outer system, he smiled inwardly. They were taking the bait. Perseus had concluded the Hegemony's vanguard would not approach Koton directly and instead would seek to establish footholds in the outer system, capturing critical industrial capacity and prevent the Republic from using outer system stations and settlements for rearguard actions. So, as detachments of the Hegemony's forces began to raid and pillage the carcass of the Republic's interplanetary industrial bases, Perseus turned to one of the generals in charge of interplanetary defense assets. Fire! His order echoed through the bunker and were instantly executed. In orbit and spread across the system, a handful of Yenneferan weapons platforms emerged from their various hiding places, launched their FTL-propelled ordnance towards the abandoned outer system stations, and then retreated into darkness. The small weapons pods jumped into FTL within moments of being fired, traveling seconds across the comparatively vast distances of real space before emerging at 27 abandoned and evacuated deep space stations and outposts almost simultaneously. Centuries of Koton's deep space industrial capacity was utterly destroyed, used as a trap to lure in the aggressors, and it had worked perfectly. Soon, half the Hegemony's vanguard had been destroyed. Yet the greatest prize had been a Galador swarm cruiser-led strike group at the heart of the vanguard. The capital ship and its escorts had jumped into orbit of the Jovian-class gas giant of Rapia. Their target was the largest known deep space station in the Diaspora at the time and the pride of the Republic, Talocan Station. Yet, the vast spinning torrid station, a marvel of engineering that had only months earlier been home to nearly 500,000 people, now hung in the black of space. Instead, it housed a skeleton crew of 10,000 martyrs and was armed with series of Covenant-acquired planet-buster anti-gravity bombs. The detonation of the bombs yielded unimaginable destruction. Supplemented by additional strikes from the weapons platforms, the 36-strong strike group was almost instantly destroyed. The volatile gravity fluctuations seemed to tear at reality itself, crushing and breaking the cruiser and sending the capital ship's hulk burning into Ravia's upper atmosphere. Witnessing the icons blink out of existence on the display, one combat flotilla and strike group at a time, inspired a rousing cheer from the gathered soldiers in the bunker. Hope had been established. It was one of the few genuine victories of Republican forces in the early days of the Hegemony War. Its strategic impact proved minimal, as within days, all of Republic's military assets beyond low orbit had been systematically hunted down and destroyed by the Hegemony's full fleet, and the Great Siege of Koton began. Yet, even to this day, 80 years on, the forces of the Republic continue to resist the conquest of the Hegemony. Children are taught from an early age that there is no greater honor than to give one's life in the defeat and destruction of the enemy. And when those children grow up and go to war on behalf of their republic, they proudly rally to a war cry. Two simple words that embody the fervent hope that one day the hegemony will be defeated. Remember Talocan.